The rain hammered against the bulletproof windows of the black Mercedes as it glided through Manhattan's financial district. Victoria Sterling adjusted her Hermes watch, 7:23 a.m. She had exactly 37 minutes before the most important board meeting of her career, one that would determine whether Sterling Global Enterprises would acquire the largest tech conglomerate in Asia. "Traffic's worse than usual today, Ms. Sterling," came a voice from the driver's seat. The voice belonged to Maya Rodriguez, 28 years old, with steady hands and an impeccable driving record. What Victoria hadn't expected when she hired Maya 6 months ago was how that voice would begin to affect her in ways she couldn't explain. Victoria glanced up from her tablet, catching Maya's dark eyes in the rearview mirror. There was something different about her today. A tension in her shoulders, the way she gripped the steering wheel just a little tighter than usual. "Take the Madison Route," Victoria instructed, her voice carrying the authority that had built a $40 billion empire. "And Maya?" "Yes, ma'am?" "You seem distracted. Is everything all right?" Maya's eyes flickered to the mirror again, meeting Victoria's gaze for just a moment longer than professional courtesy required. "I'm fine, Ms. Sterling. Just focused on getting you there safely." But Victoria Sterling hadn't become one of the most powerful women in corporate America by ignoring details. She noticed everything, from the slight tremor in Maya's voice to the way her knuckles had gone white against the leather steering wheel. More concerning was her own reaction to these observations. When had she started paying such close attention? To her driver's emotional state? The Mercedes turned onto Fifth Avenue, and Victoria forced herself to return to the acquisition reports. Sterling Global needed this deal. The company her father had built from nothing, the empire she had expanded across 6 continents, depended on securing this partnership. She couldn't afford distractions. But as Maya navigated through the morning traffic with expert precision, Victoria found her attention drifting again. She remembered the day Maya had walked into her office for the interview, confident but not cocky, professional but warm. Victoria had gone through 17 drivers in 2 years. They were either intimidated by her status, tried to get too close for networking purposes, or simply couldn't handle the demanding schedule. Maya was different. She was punctual, discreet, and possessed an unusual combination of street smarts and genuine intelligence. During their daily commutes, she had begun sharing observations about traffic patterns, city politics, even subtle insights about the people they encountered. Victoria found herself looking forward to these conversations more than she cared to admit. "Ms. Sterling," Maya's voice interrupted her thoughts. "We're here." Victoria looked up to see the imposing glass facade of Sterling Tower piercing through the gray morning sky. 47 floors of steel and ambition, with her corner office commanding the top floor. She had built this. She had earned every square foot of this empire through 18-hour days, ruthless negotiations, and sacrifices that kept her awake at night. "Thank you, Maya. I'll need you back here at 2 p.m. for the client dinner preparations." "Of course. And Ms. Sterling?" Maya turned around, facing her directly for the first time that morning. "Good luck with your meeting today." Something in Maya's expression made Victoria pause. It wasn't the usual polite encouragement she received from employees. There was genuine warmth there, a sincerity that seemed to see past the tailored suits, and corporate armor to something more vulnerable underneath. "Thank you," Victoria replied, her voice softer than intended. As she stepped out of the car and walked toward the tower entrance, Victoria felt an unfamiliar flutter in her chest. She pushed the feeling away, straightening her shoulders and lifting her chin. She had a company to run, a legacy to protect, and no room for whatever this was becoming. Inside the elevator, ascending toward her destiny, Victoria caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. At 42, she was still striking, sharp, green eyes, auburn hair always perfectly styled, a jawline that conveyed both intelligence and determination. She had built walls around herself so carefully, so systematically, that she'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone genuinely care about her well-being. The elevator chimed softly as it reached the 47th floor. The doors opened to reveal her assistant, Jennifer, waiting with the morning briefings and a concerned expression. "Victoria, the Hong Kong team needs your decision on the subsidiary restructure before the board meeting, and Senator Morrison's office called again about the regulatory hearing next month." Victoria nodded, stepping into her role as CEO with practiced ease. But as she walked toward her office, she couldn't shake the image of Maya's eyes in the rearview mirror, or the way her own heartbeat had quickened when Maya had wished her luck. She settled behind her mahogany desk, surrounded by the trappings of success. Awards, photographs with world leaders, the view of Central Park stretching out below. Everything she had worked for, everything she had built, lay before her. But for the first time in years, Victoria Sterling felt the weight of loneliness pressing against her chest. Outside, storm clouds gathered over Manhattan, and in the distance, thunder rolled across the sky like a warning. 3 weeks had passed since the acquisition deal, and Sterling Global Enterprises was now the third largest corporation in the world. The financial magazines had dubbed Victoria the Queen of Corporate America, and her net worth had increased by $8 billion overnight. Yet, as she sat in the back of the Mercedes on this particular Thursday evening, none of those achievements seemed to matter. "Long day?" Maya asked, adjusting the rearview mirror slightly. Their eyes met briefly before Maya focused back on the road ahead. "The longest," Victoria replied, loosening her silk scarf. "Sometimes I wonder if it's all worth it." It was the most personal thing she had ever shared with Maya, and the admission surprised her. Victoria Sterling didn't do vulnerability. She had learned early in her career that showing weakness was a luxury she couldn't afford. But something about the gentle hum of the engine, the privacy of the back seat, and Maya's presence made her defenses feel unnecessary. "What would you do?" Victoria continued, surprising herself further. "If you had built something massive, something everyone expected you to maintain perfectly, but you weren't sure it was making you happy anymore." Maya was quiet for a long moment, navigating through the evening traffic with her usual skill. When she finally spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "Careful. I think happiness gets complicated when you have so much to lose," Maya said. "But maybe the question isn't whether what you've built makes you happy. Maybe it's whether you're building the life you actually want to live." Victoria stared out the window at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the twilight. When had her driver become the person who understood her dilemmas better than her board of directors, her friends, even her therapist? "Pull over," Victoria said suddenly. "Ma'am, just for a minute. I need some air." Maya found a quiet spot along the Hudson River, where the city's chaos felt distant and the water reflected the last traces of sunset. Victoria stepped out of the car, breathing deeply for the first time all day. To her surprise, Maya got out too, leaning against the hood of the Mercedes. "You don't have to," Victoria began. "I know," Maya said simply, "but you looked like you could use some company." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching a few late joggers pass by on the riverside path. Victoria studied Maya's profile, the strong line of her jaw, the way the evening light caught in her dark hair, the quiet confidence in her posture. Maya Rodriguez was beautiful, but it was more than that. She possessed a calmness that Victoria envied, a sense of being comfortable in her own skin. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said. "Of course. Why did you take this job? You're obviously intelligent, educated. You could do anything." Maya smiled, the expression Victoria had come to treasure during their months together. "Honest answer?" Victoria nodded. "I was fascinated by you," Maya admitted. "I'd read about you, seen you on magazine covers, the woman who built an empire, who never compromised, who seemed to have everything figured out. I wanted to understand what that kind of life actually looked like up close." "And what did you discover?" Maya turned to face her fully, and Victoria felt that familiar flutter in her chest intensify. I discovered that the most successful person I'd ever met is also the loneliest. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. She had sacrificed relationships, friendships, personal connections, all in service of building something greater than herself. But standing here beside Maya, she wondered if she had built a prison instead of a kingdom. "I should get you home," Maya said gently, sensing Victoria's emotional shift. But as they got back in the car, Victoria made a decision that would change everything. "Actually, I'm hungry. Do you know anywhere good? Somewhere normal?" Maya glanced in the rearview mirror, surprise flickering across her features. Victoria Sterling didn't do normal. She attended charity galas and exclusive restaurants where reservations required weeks of advance planning. "There's a little Italian place in Brooklyn," Maya said carefully. "Nothing fancy, but the food is incredible." "Perfect." 20 minutes. Later, they sat across from each other in a tiny restaurant where the checkered tablecloths were slightly worn and the owner's mother made pasta by hand in the back kitchen. Victoria had removed her blazer, and for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. "This is nice," Victoria said, meaning it. "You sound surprised." "I am. I haven't eaten at a place like this in..." Victoria paused, calculating. "Maybe 15 years. What changed?" Victoria looked across the table at Maya, at the woman who had somehow become the most important part of her daily routine, and felt something shift inside her chest. "I think you changed," she said quietly. The admission hung between them like a confession. Maya's eyes widened slightly, and Victoria saw her own conflicted emotions reflected there. Attraction, uncertainty, the recognition that they were approaching. A line that, once crossed, would change everything. "Victoria," Maya said softly, using her first name for the first time. "I know," Victoria replied. "I know this is complicated. I know it's probably impossible. But I can't pretend anymore that this is just a professional relationship." Maya reached across the small table, her fingers barely brushing Victoria's hand. The touch was electric, sending warmth up Victoria's arm and straight to her heart. "Neither can I," Maya whispered. Outside, Brooklyn hummed with evening life. But inside the small restaurant, Victoria Sterling felt like the world had narrowed to just this moment, this connection, this woman who had somehow slipped past every defense she had ever built. The private estate in the Hamptons had been Victoria's sanctuary for over a decade. Nestled behind tall hedges and security gates, the sprawling property offered something her Manhattan penthouse couldn't: complete privacy. It was here, on a sun-drenched Saturday afternoon in late spring, that she had invited Maya for the first time. "This is incredible," Maya breathed, stepping out of the car and taking in the manicured gardens, the infinity pool that seemed to blend into the horizon, and the elegant colonial mansion that had been featured in Architectural Digest 3 years prior. Victoria watched Maya's reaction with unusual nervousness. She had entertained world leaders, celebrities, and fellow billionaires at this estate, but their opinions had never mattered to her the way Maya's did now. Over the past 2 months, their relationship had evolved into something neither of them had expected. Stolen dinners at quiet restaurants, long conversations during extended car rides, and a growing intimacy that terrified and exhilarated Victoria in equal measure. "I thought we could have lunch by the pool," Victoria said, leading Maya through the French doors onto the stone terrace. No interruptions, no schedules. The past weeks had been a delicate dance of secrecy. Their relationship existed in the spaces between Victoria's public life, late evening drives that extended far beyond their destinations, weekend calls that lasted for hours, and careful touches that could be dismissed as accidental if anyone was watching. But here, in the safety of her private world, they could finally be themselves. Maya had changed out of her usual professional attire into a simple sundress that made Victoria's breath catch. Without the barrier of the car between them, without the formality of their employer-employee dynamic, Maya seemed more relaxed, more radiant. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up," Maya said, settling into a comfortable chair beside the pool. "6 months ago, I was driving corporate executives around the city. Now you're what?" Victoria prompted, settling beside her. "Now I'm falling in love with one of the most powerful women in the world," Maya said simply. The words hung in the air between them like a bridge neither had been brave enough to build before. Victoria felt her heart racing, not from anxiety, but from the pure relief of finally hearing what they had both been thinking. "Maya," Victoria whispered, reaching for her hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, and Victoria marveled at how right it felt. She had built her life around control, strategy, and calculated risks. But this, whatever this was, felt like the first genuine thing she had experienced in years. "I've been thinking about what you said," Victoria continued, "about building the life I actually want to live. And what do you want?" Victoria looked into Maya's eyes, seeing acceptance and understanding there. "I want to wake up next to someone who cares about me, not my stock portfolio. I want to have conversations that matter. I want to feel like myself, not like a brand or a symbol or an expectation." Maya smiled, the expression lighting up her entire face. "Those sound like reasonable goals." "With you," Victoria added, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want those things with you." Maya's response was to lean forward and kiss her, soft and tentative at first, then with growing confidence as Victoria responded. It was their first real kiss, not the careful brush of lips they had shared after dinner the previous week, but something deeper, more honest. When they broke apart, Victoria rested her forehead against Maya's. "This is terrifying," she admitted. "Good terrifying or bad terrifying?" "The best kind of terrifying." They spent the afternoon talking, swimming, and existing in a bubble of possibility that Victoria knew couldn't last forever. Maya told her about her childhood in Queens, her dreams of traveling the world, her close relationship with her grandmother who had raised her. Victoria found herself sharing memories she hadn't accessed in years. Her father's lessons about business, her mother's death when she was 25, the loneliness of building an empire with no one to truly share it with. As the sun began to set, they prepared dinner together in Victoria's gourmet kitchen. Maya proved to be an excellent cook, guiding Victoria through the preparation of a simple pasta dish with a confidence that made Victoria realize how little she actually knew about the woman she was falling for. "You're full of surprises," Victoria said, watching Maya expertly toss ingredients in a pan. "Good surprises, I hope. The best kind." They ate on the terrace as twilight painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by comfortable silences and meaningful glances. Victoria felt more relaxed than she had in months, maybe years. "I have to ask you something," Maya said as they finished their wine. "Anything. What happens on Monday morning? When we go back to the city, back to your office, back to the real world?" It was the question Victoria had been dreading, the one that threatened to shatter the perfect bubble they had created. In Manhattan, she was Victoria Sterling, CEO, public figure, role model for women in business. The press scrutinized her every move, analyzed her every relationship, dissected her every decision. "I don't know," Victoria admitted. "I wish I could say we could just continue like this, openly, without complications. But my life is complicated, Maya. The company, the media, the stakeholders, they all have expectations." Maya nodded, understanding flickering in her eyes. "I know who you are, Victoria. I've always known what I was getting into." "Have you?" "Because it's not just about us. If this comes out wrong, if we're not careful, it could damage everything I've built. And that wouldn't just hurt me, It would. Hurt thousands of employees, millions of shareholders. Are you saying we should stop? Victoria reached for Maya's hand, holding it tightly. I'm saying we need to be smart, careful. This matters too much to lose because we weren't thoughtful about how we handle it. Maya squeezed her hand in return. Then we'll be careful. We'll be smart. But Victoria? Yes? I'm not going anywhere. Whatever challenges come, whatever complications we face, I'm not walking away from this. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Victoria felt a sense of hope she hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with obstacles and potential scandals. But for the first time since building her empire, she had someone, worth protecting beyond corporate profits and stock prices. She had Maya, and that felt like the most valuable acquisition of her entire career. The photograph appeared on the front page of the New York Financial Tribune on a Tuesday morning in late October. It wasn't a particularly damning image. Just Victoria and Maya sharing what appeared to be an intimate conversation at a corner table in a small Brooklyn restaurant. But the headline sent shockwaves through the financial world. Sterling's secret. Billionaire. CEO's romantic rendezvous with employee raises questions. Victoria stared at the newspaper in her office, her hands trembling slightly as she read the accompanying article. The journalist had done their homework. They had traced Maya's employment history, detailed the potential power imbalance, and included quotes from unnamed sources within Sterling Global who expressed concern about the CEO's judgment. Her assistant, Jennifer, stood nervously by the door. The board is requesting an emergency meeting for this afternoon. And ma'am, the phones haven't stopped ringing. Every major news outlet wants a statement. Victoria's mind raced through damage control scenarios. In the 6 months since her relationship with Maya had begun, they had been extraordinarily careful. They varied their meeting locations, used different restaurants, never displayed public affection beyond what might be construed as friendly. Apparently, it hadn't been enough. "Where's Maya?" Victoria asked. "She called in sick today, but Victoria, there's something else." Jennifer's voice carried a note of concern that made Victoria's stomach clench. Security footage from the parking garage shows several reporters trying to approach her car this morning. They may have followed her home. Victoria closed her eyes, feeling the weight of what she had feared most coming to pass. Maya hadn't signed up for this level of scrutiny. She was a private person who valued her quiet life, her close relationships with family, her ability to move through the world without constant observation. "Get me Maya on the phone," Victoria instructed. "I've been trying. She's not answering." Victoria looked out her office window at the city spread below, the empire she had built that now felt like it was crumbling around her. Every decision had consequences, and she was finally facing the cost of choosing love over caution. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "We need to talk. Tonight. Usual place." The usual place was a quiet park on Roosevelt Island, where they had begun meeting when the weather grew colder. It offered privacy and neutrality, not Victoria's world or Maya's, but somewhere in between. That evening, Victoria found Maya sitting on their regular bench, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. Even in the dim light of the park's lampposts, Victoria could see the tension in Maya's shoulders, the exhaustion in her posture. "I'm sorry," Victoria said, settling beside her. "I'm so sorry this happened." Maya turned to face her, and Victoria was shocked by what she saw. Maya's eyes were red from crying, but there was something else there. A hardness that Victoria had never seen before. "They followed me to my grandmother's house," Maya said quietly. "She's 83 years old, Victoria. She opened her door this morning to reporters asking if she knew her granddaughter was sleeping with her boss." Victoria felt physically ill. "Maya, They offered her money for information about me, about us. They wanted to know if I had been taking advantage of you, if I was some kind of gold digger." "What did she say?" "She told them to get off her property before she called the police." Maya's voice carried a mixture of pride and pain. But Victoria, she's scared. She's never dealt with anything like this. She keeps asking me if I'm in trouble, if I've done something wrong. Victoria reached for Maya's hand, but Maya pulled away. The rejection stung more than any boardroom confrontation Victoria had ever faced. "We knew this could happen," Victoria said carefully. "Knowing it and living it are very different things." Maya stood up, pacing a few steps away before turning back. "I got a call from my cousin in Los Angeles today. Someone had contacted her, trying to verify stories about my past. They're digging into everything, Victoria. My college years, my previous jobs, my family. I can make it stop. I have lawyers, PR people. Can you?" Maya's voice was sharp now, filled with a frustration that had been building. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like the most powerful woman in corporate. America can't protect the person she claims to love from having her life torn apart." The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. Not because they were intended to hurt, but because they were true. For all her wealth, all her influence, all her carefully constructed power, she couldn't shield Maya from the consequences of loving her. "What do you want me to do?" Victoria asked. Maya was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was filled with exhaustion. "I want you to tell me honestly. Is there a world where this works? Where we can be together without destroying both of our lives?" Victoria wanted to say yes. She wanted to promise that they could weather this storm, that love would be enough to overcome the media scrutiny, the corporate pressure, the public judgment. But standing there in the cold October night, facing the woman she loved who was bearing the brunt of her fame, Victoria wasn't sure she believed it anymore. "I don't know," she admitted. Maya nodded, as if she had expected that answer. "I need some time," she said, "to think, to figure out how to protect my family, to decide if I'm strong enough for what dating you really means." "How much time?" "I don't know that either." Victoria watched Maya walk away into the darkness, and for the first time in her professional life, she felt completely powerless. She had built an empire by making calculated decisions, by weighing risks against rewards, by never allowing emotion to cloud her judgment. But love, she realized, operated by entirely different rules, and those rules might cost her everything she had never known she wanted until she found it with Maya. The emergency board meeting lasted 14 hours. Victoria sat at the head of the polished conference table, facing 12 of the most influential business leaders in the world, as they debated her future with Sterling Global Enterprises. Outside the windows of the 47th floor boardroom, snow fell steadily over Manhattan, the first of the season. "The scandal has cost us 12% in stock value over the past week," said Harold Blackwood, the board's longest-serving member. "Our institutional investors are nervous. The Singapore deal is on hold pending resolution of this situation." Victoria listened to each concern, each calculation of damage to the company's reputation. She had prepared for this moment, had run the numbers herself. The relationship with Maya, now exposed and scrutinized by every major media outlet, wasn't just affecting her personal life. It was threatening the stability of the empire she had spent 2 decades building. "What are you proposing?" Victoria asked, though she already knew the answer. "A separation agreement," replied Susan Chen, the board's newest member. "Ms. Rodriguez leaves the company with a generous severance package and signs a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. You issue a public statement acknowledging poor judgment in mixing personal and professional relationships. The media attention dies down, and we move forward." Victoria stared out at the city lights beginning to twinkle. In the early evening, 2 weeks had passed since that night in Roosevelt Island. Maya had taken indefinite leave from her position, and Victoria hadn't seen her since. The silence between them felt like a physical wound that wouldn't heal. "And if I refuse?" Victoria asked. "Then we'll have to consider whether your leadership is still in the best interests of Sterling Global," Blackwood said carefully. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Victoria had built this company from the ground up, had made the board members millions, had created one of the most successful enterprises in modern business history. but she also understood the reality of corporate governance. If they believed she was more liability than asset, they would move against her. "I need 48 hours, Victoria said finally. "Victoria," Susan began. 48 hours, Victoria repeated, standing. "Then I'll give you my answer." That night, Victoria sat alone in her penthouse apartment, surrounded by the trappings of success that suddenly felt meaningless. The awards, the photographs with world leaders, the expensive art collection, none of it filled the emptiness that Maya's absence had created. Her phone rang at 11 p.m. Maya's name appeared on the screen, and Victoria's heart raced as she answered. "Hi," Maya said softly. "Hi. I've been thinking. About us. About everything that's happened." Victoria gripped the phone tightly. "And? I want to see you. Can you come over?" Victoria was in her car within minutes, driving herself through the snowy streets to Maya's apartment in Queens. She had never been to Maya's home before. It had seemed too risky, too likely to expose their relationship. Now, with their secret already in ruins, the caution felt pointless. Maya's apartment was small but warm, filled with books, plants, and photographs of family. It felt more like home than Victoria's sterile penthouse ever had. "I made tea," Maya said, leading her to the small kitchen. They sat across from each other at Maya's tiny dining table, the same nervous energy between them that had existed 6 months earlier when everything began. "The board wants you gone," Victoria said. "Full severance, NDA, clean break." Maya nodded. "I figured. What did you tell them?" "That I need time to think." "But you already know what you're going to do, don't you?" Victoria looked into Maya's eyes and saw understanding there. Maya knew her well enough to recognize that Victoria Sterling never asked for time unless she was preparing for something dramatic. "I've been thinking too," Victoria said, "about what kind of life I actually want to live, about whether building an empire means anything if you have no one to share it with." "Victoria, I'm going to step down as CEO." The words hung between them like a bridge neither had expected Victoria to build. Maya's eyes widened in shock. "You can't. That company is your life's work." "No," Victoria said quietly. "It was my life's work, but it doesn't have to be my life's only work." She reached across the table, taking Maya's hands in hers. "I've spent 20 years building something that everyone else thought was important, but the most important thing I've ever found is sitting across from me right now." "What would you do?" "Start over. Build something smaller. Something that's actually mine. Maybe something we could build together if you wanted to." Maya was quiet for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what Victoria was suggesting. "You'd give up billions of dollars for me." "I'd give up everything for the chance to build a real life with you." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "The media. Attention won't just disappear because you step down. No. But it'll die down eventually. And Maya, I have enough money that we never have to worry about anything except being happy. We could travel, start a foundation, build something that matters, in a different way. Are you sure? Because once you do this, you can't take it back." Victoria stood up, moving around the small table to kneel beside Maya's chair. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and build something beautiful with you. Everything else is just details." Maya cupped Victoria's face in her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I love you too. God, I love you so much it scares me." "So is that a yes?" Maya's answer was a kiss that tasted like new beginnings and the courage to choose love over everything else. 3 months later, the business world was still reeling from Victoria Sterling's unprecedented decision to step down as CEO of Sterling Global Enterprises. The company's stock had recovered under new leadership, and the media had moved on to other scandals. Victoria and Maya were in Costa Rica, sitting on the beach outside the small eco-resort they had purchased together. Victoria was reading business plans for the environmental foundation they were starting, while Maya worked on her photography, a passion she had never had time to pursue during her years as a driver. "Any regrets?" Maya asked, lowering her camera. Victoria looked out at the ocean, then back at the woman she had chosen over an empire. Maya's skin was golden from the sun, her hair loose and free, her smile more radiant than Victoria had ever seen it. "Just one," Victoria said. Maya's expression grew concerned. "What?" "I wish I had been brave enough to choose you sooner." Maya laughed, the sound mixing with the waves and the cries of tropical birds. "Well, we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time." Victoria reached for Maya's hand, intertwining their fingers as they watched the sun set over the Pacific. She had spent her entire adult life building an empire, accumulating wealth and power that she thought would bring her happiness. But sitting here with Maya, planning a smaller life filled with purpose and love, Victoria Sterling finally understood what true success looked like. It looked like courage. It looked like choosing the person who saw past your accomplishments to your heart. It looked like love that was worth more than all the empires in the world. The waves crashed against the shore, and in the distance, the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adventures, new opportunities to build something meaningful together. But tonight, Victoria Sterling was exactly where she belonged, beside the woman who had taught her that the greatest empire of all was the one built on love.